Why at With Intent we refuse to generalize. Is the way you speak getting in your way? Last week I saw a post on Threads where a woman said, "We don't need to say some men. No explanation needed, because we get it." Around the same time, another woman accused me of enabling men's bad behavior because I refused to lump them all into the same toxic group. You know, because generalizing has never led to any catastrophic abuses of human rights. Also, my exes would have some thoughts on whether I enable bad behavior, just saying. Here's the truth. I avoid generalizations whenever possible. If I use one, it's often to spotlight something, to provoke, not flatten. As someone who's never fit neatly into any category, I'm that person in every conversation asking, "But what about?" Because there are always exceptions. And generalizations, they're kryptonite to meaningful discourse and personal growth. Let's talk about why. The brain, the tunnel, and the shot. Yes, there are real issues in how men and women are connecting right now. But men do this and women are like that isn't an analysis. It's a shrug, a deflection. And worse, it's a program. Let's talk about why this matters by taking a look at Steph Curry. Curry's range is insane. He can hit from anywhere, including the tunnel. The sheer amount of calculation his brain has to do mid-movement, distance, angle, velocity, arc, it's mind-bending. But he's not consciously doing math out there. It's his subconscious doing the heavy lifting. And it only works that well because of what he's fed it. Steph didn't just roll out of bed and become the greatest shooter in NBA history. We know this. He's taken millions of shots in practice, over and over, day after day, studying tape, honing footwork, running through screens until his body knew how to adjust without thinking. Rehearsing that high arc fadeaway with the defender in his face until it became reflex. He didn't vaguely want to be great. He trained like he wanted to make history. The result? His subconscious has a deep archive of specific, high-quality data to pull from. When he's mid-air and off balance, he doesn't have to calculate consciously. The precision is already there, wired in through repetition. That's the power of programming your brain with specificity. It makes the impossible feel automatic. What does this have to do with you? If specificity trains the subconscious to hit impossible shots, what does generalization do? It trains your subconscious to expect some vague patterns over and over, even when they're wrong. Your brain, like the rest of your body, gets lazy if it's not actively challenged. And here's the kicker. Our brains are already biased to absorb negative ideas more easily. That's the amygdala's job, the part of our brain responsible for scanning for threats. It's constantly on alert, ready to flag anything that feels unsafe. So when we feed it generalizations like men are dangerous or women are manipulative, even when we consciously know we mean some, that part of our brain lights up. Every repetition strengthens the connection between those vague statements and perceived danger, even when there's no actual threat. Over time, those generalizations become mental landmines, tripping alarms in places where empathy and understanding should live. Kind of explains a lot, doesn't it? The tricky part? There's no percentage of time you can generalize before your brain hijacks your reaction. That's literally what psychologists call it, an amygdala hijack. It's when your emotional brain takes over before your rational brain can catch up. That's why some people react instantly, even defensively, to things that don't warrant it, because their brains are responding to patterns they've unconsciously stored as unsafe. But here's the good news. This reaction isn't fixed. Practices like mindfulness, deep breathing, or simply pausing for a few seconds before responding can short-circuit the hijack. Even 6 seconds of calm can reset your nervous system. The more you focus on the present and intentionally choose specific, grounded language, the more you retrain your brain to respond instead of react. Let's take a very online example. We all know we don't mean all men. Okay, but your subconscious doesn't know that. Your subconscious mind doesn't record intention. That's why jokes about marginalized groups, even the quote-unquote harmless ones, can still do damage. If the tone and context aren't there every single time, your brain doesn't log it as just a joke. It logs the message. And that message shows up later in your reflexes, not your reason. Now imagine what happens when somebody repeatedly hears or says, women are shallow, or men are emotionally unavailable, or people just use you. Even if they know better, their subconscious doesn't. And the deeper that pattern gets embedded, the harder it becomes to form new connections, even the healthy kind. Language is programming. When you say men are or women always, without a qualifier like some, many, often, rarely, you're stripping your subconscious of nuance. You're deleting the exceptions. You're reinforcing the very patterns that make it hard to connect. Back to Steph. When you feed your brain the right information over and over, it doesn't not stick. It can't. Every rep, every clip, every calculated adjustment gets stored, whether consciously or not. That's what makes it possible for him to launch a shot mid-sprint off balance with two defenders in his face and still drain it. The data is already there. His subconscious has been trained to recognize the moment and respond in real time. If he trained without that level of specificity, he'd never hit that tunnel shot. That's what you're doing when you stop speaking in generalizations. You're giving your brain the ability to adjust, to calculate nuance under pressure in the moments that matter most. Real world examples. Let's talk about daters for grub. When I posted about this on Reddit, hundreds of women weighed in. Most had never gone on a date just for the free meal. Many said they didn't even know a single woman who had. A few had encountered one or two in the wild, and sure, that guy in the comments still chimed in with, but it happens. Yeah, it does. That's not the point. The point is, when men say women date for free food instead of a few women date for free food, peak accuracy, or even some women date for free food, bare minimum accuracy, their brains record that generalization as truth, even in the face of evidence to the contrary. So instead of saying there are many women who date sincerely, I just need to find one, their brain says they're all using me. Your subconscious always believes what you repeat, even when your conscious mind knows better. Here's an example where both sides are at play. I've seen multiple men take exception because their programming says women believe all men are dangerous and that's not fair to innocent guys. They even go so far as to defend men who they assume to be innocent, ahead of prioritizing the safety of women who are suffering actual proven harm, even losing their lives in some cases. One man I was in dialogue with went so far as taking the stance that it's unnecessary to even acknowledge the men who are doing harm. The reality is, most women are expressing nuance around this conversation. Most often, it sounds like, because it's impossible to know which man I encounter might be dangerous, I have to be cautious and aware all the time, and that's exhausting. It's literally the reason so many of us have heard the bear in the woods scenario. In this case, the man I was conversing with started out by saying, "I'm glad I'm a man and don't sit around all day fueling irrational fears." Setting aside the deep condescension pretending to be high-mindedness, there's an all-women stance at the root of this argument. It probably sounds something like women's emotions cause them to believe that all men are dangerous. Because he's accepted generalizations around why women experience fear, narrowing it down to a lack of emotional regulation, he's created a dynamic where he's easily able to dismiss the fact that women fear because of lived experience, not imagined threats. Believing the real issue is women's fueling of irrational fears protects the men who are doing harm from accountability. The takeaway? Your brain is listening all the time. If you want real connection, you have to train it to recognize real possibilities, not just protect against imagined threats. This means choosing language that reflects nuance, not fear. That means using qualifiers. That means asking, what am I telling my subconscious every time I say, hear, or read this? At With Intent, we don't generalize. Not because we're trying to be nice, but because we're trying to build something real. And reality doesn't live in extremes. It lives in specificity. Want to train your brain for connection instead of combat? Stick with us. We're building a new default, one conscious word at a time.